Because ultimately it's about what you know, it's about who you know. You know, The Godfather's all about that. About basically doing people favors without expecting anything in return on LinkedIn. Although they reserve the right to actually ask you for a favor on your wedding day. See, that joke doesn't work for millennials. Because they go, what's The Godfather? And I now have to explain what The Godfather is. It's just loses. But many people remember Kevin Bacon. And again, it's not a millennial joke. Kevin Bacon used to be 6 degrees of separation. He used to know every single person in Hollywood. So now on LinkedIn, it's very much about 3 degrees of separation. So why this is important to have lots of first connections on LinkedIn is because of who it leads in terms of second connections and third connections. Because this is the way how you use the data on LinkedIn to sell. So for example, I have about 12,000 connections in Singapore, who are my first connections. That's only important because of who they know. So that allows me to have 330,000 second, 1.5 million third, which makes me basically enable me to have 2 million of the 2.3 million people in Singapore I can touch. I can reach through my first, my second, my third connections. So for social selling, it's very, very powerful. And I did the same thing in Hong Kong. I reached 1.4 of the 1.4 million people in Hong Kong, for example, through my first, second, my third. In Sydney, where I'm going next week, for example, 1.9. In Shanghai, 1.7. And in Asia Pacific, I can reach 150 million people through my first, my second, and my third connections. And that's the power of having the right kind of first connections. And then in Europe, for example, I can reach most of Zurich by having only 469 connections. So it's not about the number of connections, it's about who they know, how many connections they have. Because obviously if they only knew one person each, it wouldn't work. They have to have lots of connections in the right kind of area. So I can reach 3.2 million people in London, including the infamous Oleg, who has about 2 million followers. But it means I can reach 125 million people in Europe through my first, my second, my third connections, which is great for social selling. Because ultimately, people do buy people. And nothing emphasizes that more than someone like Elon Musk, for example. So you like Elon Musk? So it's all about people, it's all about you. So Sales Navigator is all about that. So how many people actually have Sales Navigator here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. OK, a few. So basically, Sales Navigator is the best way of actually marketing on LinkedIn. Do any of you use Point Drive? Use Point Drive? Anyone use Point Drive? No, OK. So if you've got Sales Navigator, you should use Point Drive, because Point Drive is an amazing way to actually share data, share content, but see who's actually sharing it. Because if you drive someone to your website, you have no idea who that person is. Whereas on LinkedIn, if you share content, you can actually track who that person is. So on Point Drive, which is part of Sales Navigator, you can upload a case study or white paper or video or results, or in my case, recommendations, and you get a link. And then you use that link on communications, like in-mails, open profiles, invitations, congratulations, and so forth. You can then tell if someone's clicked on that link. It tells you who that person is. So I can see every single person of these 76 people who viewed this last week, for example, who's actually clicked on that link. I can then see of those people, for example, this person's viewed it twice, 52 seconds, and she hasn't downloaded it. So it gives you the data. I can then follow up with that person and say, thank you very much, Jean, for viewing my recommendations. How can I help you? And that's soft sell, because I'm not going to her hard selling. She's coming to me. She's researching me. So it's very, very, very powerful in terms of a tool to use the data of LinkedIn for your advantage. Classic social selling. In the same way you might use the data in terms of breaking it down on Sales Navigator. So Sales Navigator is the way to socially sell on LinkedIn because of the data. Because the free model doesn't really give you the access to things like this. So I can tell of these 2,000 people who are, say, founders, more than 10 years experience, owners of a company in Singapore, for example, I can see who's actually posted on LinkedIn. Now that's really, really, really important, because LinkedIn do not give active user numbers. They tell you 610 million people are registered, but unlike Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and everybody else who are publicly listed companies, they do not tell you those people are actually active. So the only way to tell how many of the 610 are actually active, and many people guess that only about a third are, so maybe 200 million are active on a monthly basis, is by looking at Sales Navigator. It tells you who's posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. At least you know if you send them a message, they might actually respond. Everybody else may not even be on their LinkedIn. They may never see your message. So this gives you the data to find out who those people are. And also lets you know who's actually a premium member, i.e. they're paying for the service. If they're paying for the service, they're more likely to then look at it, review it, engage. So you can only see that on Sales Navigator and the main platform here. And if you combine that with someone who's active, chances are someone responding goes up tremendously. If you also have lots of shared connections, for example, which LinkedIn tells you, that's also very powerful. So you can also see who's changed jobs, which for your guys are very good. Because you can approach them and say, hey, you changed jobs, do you want to talk about our new service, maybe introduce us? So it's a great way of having a conversation. So LinkedIn gives you the data, but only on Sales Navigator. Not even on Recruiter does it give you that. So Recruiter doesn't even tell you who's changed jobs recently, only Sales Navigator does. It also tells you who's mentioned the news, for example. And the secret source of Sales Navigator, which again, you can't see in Recruiter or the normal LinkedIn, is this, called Open Profile. So Open Profile, and a great example, is that every one of you can contact the second richest man in Singapore, Eduardo Saverin. He's only worth $12 billion. If you take away property, he's the richest man in Singapore. Now, you might know him as the co-founder and partner of B Capital Group, or the co-founder of Facebook. He's the more famous side of things. So he'd come to Singapore because he didn't want to pay $10 billion in tax in America. So basically, as a result of that, he has to invest in Singaporean companies. That's the deal with the government. Pays no tax, but he invests in Singapore startups, hence why he's got B Capital. But because it's open profile, you can send him a message. Don't do it all at the same time. Don't do, Chris said, it'd be a really good idea if basically you invest in my app. But you can message him for free, completely free. Even though he's a second connection or third connection, you can message him for free. Whereas Darius here, who's actually said he's hiring, and actually said, drop me a line, he actually says, you can't drop him a line because it says send him an email. He's not open profile. He doesn't give his email address. If you're not connected, you actually cannot drop Darius a line. Whereas Eduardo, you can. So who are you going to contact? The billion-dollar man, kind of Eduardo Saverin, who wants to invest in your app, or Darius, who wants to hire you, who you basically can't contact? You're going to choose Eduardo. So make it easy for people to actually contact you. Switch your settings to open profile. You can only do it if you're a premium member, though. It's a premium benefit. That's why the premiums normally get the most amount of engagement. That's another reason to invest in something like Sales Navigator. So in summary, has anyone seen Gladiator? It's all about your reputation. Your personal brand is found by Google and found by LinkedIn. It's how people perceive you. It's how people think about you. It's how people do business with you. And as our Gladiator lives on. And I know that from personal experience because I've gone from zero to hero. In that I wrote a blog about taxi drivers about 10 years ago and I got fired in my job as the front page of the newspaper and lots of other newspapers and radio stations around the world. And I went from that and being out of work to creating black marketing and then having like a reputation where I was on the Business Times front page as an example about how to build a company through LinkedIn. I think they just like to use my hair. And that's why we have over 1,000 recommendations. But what's stopping you doing it? Obviously, it's time, which is why I created black marketing and why I employ a diverse range of people. I've even started being really diverse and employing men now. I got so many complaints from women going, oh, don't employ another woman, for God's sake. Which is obviously the opposite of most companies in Singapore. So if you did like this, please do recommend my talk, and thank you very much for listening. Out of work to creating black marketing and then having like